present the political report of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev has the floor. To work out a realistic, thoroughly weighed program of action that will organically blend the grandeur of our aims with the realism of our capabilities, the party's plans with the hopes and aspirations of every person. The resolutions of the 27th Congress will determine both the character and the rate of our movement towards a qualitatively new condition of the Soviet Socialist Society for years and decades ahead.
Or something else. I was listening to your exchange on the air. In fact, I tried to call you up to share my view, but unfortunately, there were some important reports pouring in, so I gave way and just decided to write you. I commiserate with you, Mr. Brocalis, for some uncalled for words used by the caller, but I admire you more for keeping a cool head. It was quite apparent that the caller is not sincere in his involvement because it was not wholehearted. Why does he have a heavy heart? And why does he demand that the rest follow suit? Why do you think? Could it be because he was just doing it out of a misguided sense of patriotism? Or is it because he does not want to be left out in the heat of things? It is also obvious that he wants to be recognized for what he is doing and be made publicly known his actions. Is this necessary? I thought true kindness of heart, charity, and his participation was spontaneous and the dictates of his conscience. Let us not overrate ourselves and underrate others. Each of us, in our own small way, is doing something, contributing and participating in whatever and however small way we can. There are multitudes of us who are as concerned and involved as you claim to be, Mr. Caller. By the way, Mr. Brocalis, I am a government employee, and as such, I may not be there out in the open, but I assure you and the majority of us doing our duty to our clientele, to our fellow men, to the country we love so much, and to ourselves. How? Needless to say, because we do not need to be publicly acclaimed. We admire our fellow men who are not afraid anymore to come out in the open and fight for what is right and just. Thank you, and more power to your station. Rest assured of our continued patronage. I repeat, I salute you. Long live the truth, and long live the Filipino people. Sincerely yours, Sunag Padara. Okay, thank you for the concern, and thank you for sharing with us your thoughts, digdi po sa DCRC.
In the end, the whole country loses when statements like this are given public currency. All right. Thank you very much for coming.
That was a telephone interview monitored on Channel 4, and that was with Central Bank Governor Jobo Fernandez. We take into the room for a very urgent report from Mobile Unit Number 2.
World News from Radio Australia is read by Des Telfer. Heading this bulletin, the latest developments on the political crisis in the Philippines. In rival swearing-in ceremonies, Mr. Ferdinand Marcos and Mrs. Corazon Aquino have both been inaugurated as President of the Philippines, as the situation in the country continues to deteriorate. Police said at least 12 people had been shot dead in gun battles which broke out in Manila while the inauguration ceremonies were underway. Mrs. Aquino was sworn in by Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Claudio Tehaniki after the approval of a resolution declaring null and void Mr. Marcos's proclamation as winner of the presidential election on February 7th. The resolution was signed by her National Assembly supporters. Mrs. Aquino told a cheering crowd in a Manila club that she and opposition leader Mr. Salvador Laurel were taking power in the name and by the will of the Filipino people as president and vice president respectively. Appealing for national reconciliation, Mrs. Aquino said sovereignty resided in the people and all government authority emanated from them. After being sworn in, Mrs. Aquino appointed Mr. Laurel as Prime Minister designate. She returned the title of Defense Minister to Mr. Enrile, co-leader of the rebellion against President Marcos 3 days ago. The other rebel leader, Lieutenant General Ramos, has been named Chief of Staff and promoted to a full general. In addition to naming Mr. Laurel and Mr. Enrile to her cabinet, Mrs. Aquino created what she said were task force committees for foreign affairs, justice, finance, education, social services, the central bank, local government, and labor. Shortly after Mrs. Aquino took her oath of office, Mr. Marcos was sworn in at the presidential palace for a 4th term of office. The presidential palace said Mr. Marcos was administered the oath by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Mr. Justice Ramos and Enrile. It said no foreign diplomats were in attendance. The palace quoted Mr. Marcos as proclaiming to the world that he would preserve, promote, and protect the constitutional government of the Philippines. The French news agency, AFP, reported that thousands of government supporters had gathered at the heavily fortified presidential palace for the swearing-in ceremony. Just before the Marcos ceremony, rebels took control of 3 independent television stations in the broadcast city complex in Manila and blacked out the inauguration coverage. The presidential palace said 4 people had been killed in shooting at the Channel 9 station. A Radio Australia correspondent in Manila, Jeffrey Leach, says the loss of transmission by Channel 9 has increased the isolation of Mr. Marcos, as it was his only apparent major link with the rest of the country. The opposition has maintained full television coverage on a former government channel, which was captured yesterday, and on several radio stations. Meanwhile, police said 8 people, 1 a policewoman, had been shot dead in gun battles in Manila's financial Makati district when armed men tried to seize a police station. In the United States, President Reagan has dispatched his special envoy, Mr. Philip Habib, back to the Philippines to intensify talks. The White House spokesman, Mr. Larry Speaks, said attempts to prolong the life of the Marcos regime by violence were futile. Mr. Speaks said no offer of asylum had been made to Mr. Marcos and none had been requested. Spain, which ruled the Philippines for 300 years, said it had withdrawn its ambassador to Manila and would consider giving Mr. Marcos asylum if he asked for it. Turning to other news in this bulletin from Radio Australia, United Nations
dismantle the U.S. intervention. Tangunyan very calm na naman before the after the election, lalo na bagay itong so pagdigdi ni Philip Habib. I told you before na naging very active sa mga foreigners, especially coming from the United States. Tangunyan medyo kalmado na naman sinda. And I am not sure na kung talagang pakana na, although ang iba sa Indo naniniwala na under the table, inibaga nangyari, lalo na ang pag-aktibar ni Ramos and Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile sa paghali lang digdi ni Philip Habib. And I want to tell you, I want to emphasize na segundo man sa sakuyang nabasa, basado duman sa press interview with Enrile and Ramos, siguro ko maghahapot ka mo, bakit ngayon lang, sa loob ng 20 years sa pagkakapot ng poder ni Marcos, natatangon yan sa nangyari an arugayan na ipagrikognisar o ipagrikognisar kay Marcos bilang presidente ng Pilipinas. Natatangon yan lang. So, siguro ko, kamo igwamanin mga speculations. So,
Nakupan na po nitong grupo ng bagong alyansang makabayan at ganoon din po ang sinusang mayuuno and the League of Filipino Students. At dito po sa may paanan ng tulay ng Mendiola ay kapansin-pansin ang mga alagad ng simbahan. Nakita rin po natin na meron dito isang dayuhang pari. Ito ay nakasutana ng kulay puti at bukod dito ay meron ding mga madre, mga pari at iba pang mga seminarista. Sila po ang nandito sa unahan mismo. Dito lamang sa may harapan ng barbed wire. At ang ginawang entablado ditong mga nagrarally o nagsasagawa ng demonstrasyon ay ito pampasahero jeepney. Dito po sila po ay naglagay ng 4 na PA system dito po sa may ibabaw ng pampaserong jeepney at ito ang ginawa nila stage. At sa kasalukuyan ay nagsasalita ang isang student leader. Hindi po natin malaman kung ano ang pangalan nito at ito ay hindi natin gaano makalaman sapagkat natatakpan itong bandilang kulay pula na nakatali o nakalagay dito sa nasabing pampaserong jeep. At dito sa ating ginalagyan parang kalo, hindi katulad sa Santa Mesa na medyo maliwanag. Dito sa atin ay medyo madilim. May kadaliman po ang sitwasyon dito sa Mendiola. At dito naman po sa may left side. Kasi nandito po tayo sa may bandang Ligarda from Pustillos. Nakaharap po tayo ngayon sa may, dito sa may Corona Bazaar at dito sa left side. Ay kapansin-pansin po ang nakatabay dito na isang fire truck. At doon po sa may tapat naman ng San Beda College at CEU ay naka-formation doon ang mga nakapatid na tauhan ng Philippine Army. At dito naman po sa may sa kabila nito tulay ng Mendiola ay nakalagay po ang isang sandbag dito, may sandbag dito at dito sa kabila nito ay nakasabay po ilang tauhan ng Philippine Army. Ito po kanina yung ginaraw din natin kanina tanghali o kaninang hapon na kung saan nakamount naman ang isang caliber 30. Pero sa mga sumanda dito ay hindi natin napapanawan ang naturang machine gun na nakaumang dito sa may paanan ng Mendiola. At sa mga sumanda dito po mga kaibigan ay napakarami rin ang mga nag-iusyoso dito po sa mga demonstrador na narito ngayon sa may paanan ng Mendiola at hanggang doon po sa may harapan ng San Sebastian College and University of the East. At dito naman sa mga barbed wire ay naglagay po ng isang malaking bandila rito. Dito nga ang bandila ng bagong alyansa makabayan. At naglagay pa sila ng isang malaking stringan. At nakasulat ang Marcos Decree sa Malacanang, let the people occupy the people's palace. From ano bang grupo ito? Hindi natin mabasa yung aklat, hindi po natin mabasa yung nakasulat dito kung sino ang nag-code nito ng nasabing taga dito sa malaking streamer. At dito rin po ay kapangkin-pangkin din ang ilang kapatid ng bayan at KMU na nangihingi ng ilang donation dito po sa mga mamayan. At kapangkin-pangkin din po itong mga kanina ay mga banderitas ng Pilipinas o mga bandila may wreath na hawak-hawak ng mga Marcos loyalists. Merong nabuha itong mga grupo ng bayan at binaliktad po Binaligtad ang sabing bandila kanina noong hawak-hawak ng mga Marcos loyalist. Yung kulay asul ay nasa itaas, si Barcayon binaligtad. Yung kulay pula ngayon ang nasa itaas at pinaibaba na yung kulay asul. At ito ay kinabit sa mga bandila na League of Filipino Students, KMU at anong organization ito is SETO. SETO from the chapter at ito pa meron din grupo rito ng Kadena o kabataan para sa demokrasya at nasionalismo. Loyalist troops ang nag-occupy nito malamang taas mga 50 plus, no? Around 50 people sabihin natin. At five people were occupying the tower. Five of them were occupying the tower. At nung early morning ay merong pinadalang troops dito, si General Ramos, yung reformist troops. Siguro mga about 30 to check out and check out the situation. At naghiwa-hiwalay sila ng pwesto. Some of them ay nag-stand dito sa near the gate, no? Siguro around 500 yards or more away from the gate. Anyway, towards our left, we're looking towards Delta, no? Sa likod namin, sa bandang left. I don't know if you could imagine that with us. Tapos yung iba naman ay pumunta doon sa may bandang tropical hut. Dito sa West 4 Street, perpendicular to Quezon Boulevard. Tapos yung iba naman ay umakyat doon sa Pag-asa building to act as snipers also kasi medyo mataas ang kanilang kalaban, no? And then nagkaroon ng mga exchanges. Nandito kami noon when we reported early this morning yung mga exchanges ng fires o firefight na yun. At from there ay nagkaroon ng meron na kagad casualty. I think 2 were hit, 1 was dead, 1 was shot dead, and the other was wounded. So, natira lang sa tower ay bali 4 na buhay pero yung isa wounded. At tapos nagkaroon pa ng maraming kwentro at meron din tinamaan sa first encounter doon sa Scott Borromeo. Ito yung banda doon sa may Bohol Avenue, no? Malapit-lapit na ron.
Ay dapat tingin natin ang panawagan yan na tayo po ay matahimik nating hintayin ang kalalabasan ng kanilang pakikipagkasundo ng magkabilang panig. At hindi na po rito kailangan ang ating masisikasig na mga kilusan. Sa ngayon, wala na pong kilusang dapat na mangyari. Hindi na po kailangan. Ang kailangan po rito ay maghintay tayo sapagkat ang mga pinuno na po ang mag-uusap nito. Natupad na ng lahat ang kanyang mga tungkulin. Ang parang isang taong kinusahan sa buong bansa. Okay? At naging successful naman. Kaya yan na po lamang ang inihiling sa inyo. Na ipagkatiwala po naman natin sa mga pinuno ng ating bansa, sa mga nangunguna. Nasa sa kanila na po ang pamamaraan.
Nakikioro na ako sa imo. Pag-urunan ta na ini. Kung ano ang pinakamaray, tanganing mapakaray ang sa tuyang nasyon. The old soldier has finally surrendered. So, ladies and gentlemen, in 4 hours time siguro, tapos na ang kariribukan. I think Aquino and Marcos will be conversing through telephone. Dahil pwede sila magsalat. Dahil sila pwede mag-personal na mag-ulay unless na talagang sindang duwasa na.
Manila today is the cry of an entire nation for democracy because people there take seriously the ideals which we bequeath them.
So far, Mr. Marcos has refused to resign. In an appeal from Malacanang Palace yesterday, the president said he was fighting for his life. and called on his followers to proceed to Manila with their authorized guns to defend his government. Demonstrators who had defied the dawn to dusk curfew, many Filipinos may be wondering what steps can be taken to prevent their island nation from drifting into civil war.
We have focused on the political crisis in the Philippines following the defection of two key military advisors of President Ferdinand Marcos. Focus was written by Andrew Baird.
Helicopter ang nag-take off dito sa vicinity ng Malacanang, siguro po sa Mendiola. At ito po ay ating nakita kanina, siguro about 5 minutes ago. Ito po ang helicopter. Nulit natin ang nag-take off dito sa Malacanang. So that was about 7 minutes ago. 10-4. Ngayon, paring Dick, may isang apilan dito magmula sa Camp Crame, magmula kay General Fidel Ramos, ang mga military troops galing sa Malacanang ay aalis sa Malacanang. Ito sila ay papunta ng Fort Bonifacio. Ang mga troops papunta ng Fort Bonifacio. Pwede natin magawa yan, paring Dick. Can you make the appeal yourself? I think you have a PA. Kung maaari natin nandiyan ngayon na pabayaan dumaan ng matiwasay ang mga tropa na galing sa Malacanang. Civilian na lumalabas ng Malacanang. At dito sa loob ng kampo, ating sa akin iulap kayo sa ating mga tropa pare-paroy. Ay nakapaligid pa rin, sumalit sila ay nagtatalaga na ng mga talaga magtatantay sa magdamag. At ang mga helicopters, helicopters na siyang ginamit nila sa pagpatabagsak ng ilang helicopters din na nagbabanakabasakan na patupugin ang kampo Crame ay narito sa loob ng kampo at ang ginanay na sa kampo Crame. Ayong gagawa ng anumang makakasagin sa ating kampo, lalo na yung mga ikangay pinatin na iwasan magmahalin sa kanilang susunod itulog ng kanilang mga ating personahe o mga personalities sa ating nagpapanang pamahalaan. Kaya't tayo permanent paroon na magandang pagsasama-sama sa bagong republika matatawag ng ating bansang Pilipinas sa bagong Pangulo na si Corazon Aquino. Dito sa may perimeter ng Malacanang at may isa pong nakatira na malapit sa Malacanang mismo na nakikita-kita niya ng kanyang dalawang mata na mayroon na pong mga nagluluting doon. Baka mapasok at magluting pala. Baka mapasok daw at magluting at maraming tao mga anuli na ron. Kung Maang Ramos o kaya si Minister Enrile na kung maaaring magpadala ng mga forces doon para po yung nabanggit na napakadami na dito nagkalat sa JP Lowell Street. At marami po mamaya dito po ay nagpapalakpakan sila. Hindi po natin naman dito ano itong sakyan na papasok. Ito po ay magdadaan sa JP Lowell Street. Okay, biglang from Mendiola, JP Lowell, about 10 meters ay napakadilim po, madilim yung mga street lights po ay pasag-pasag. At dito po rin sa Tanod Bayan, ang mga bintana ay nakikita natin na pasag-pasag na rin. Puto ay marami tayo nakikita na nag-flashing lights. Doon sa may kanto ng Mendiola at JP Lowell, yung pong ilaw doon ay biglang pinatay. Paring Dick. Yes. Pangulong Marcos, we have unconfirmed reports that ang Pangulong Marcos ay nasa isa sa mga dalawang helicopter na nakita mo mismo, Dick, na umalis. At ito ay patungo sa Clark Air Force Base para umalis na papunta sa Amerika. Sa dalawang helicopter na nakita ng eyewitness mo at saka ikaw mismo na umalis kanina mga alas 9:05 yan sa Malacanang. Ngayon, yung nangyayari dyan ngayon, we are expecting that General Ramos will be sending his forces to help ease the tension among the crowd.
9:05
Opo.
evening, President Marcos at ang kabos niyang pamilya naghali sa Malacanang Palace sa duwang helicopter pasiring sa Clark Air Force Base for the United States. Kaya tapos na ang revolusyon. Si Cory Aquino sagot si Doy Laurel na ang presidente, si vice-presidente, tapos si Marcos pati ang pamilya duminulag na. Reagan natawang kim political asylum sa United States. Onder ito lari.
Onder, maliwanag po.
Kita mga Bicolano, manig magurgulyo. Number 1 ang Bicol region na tinaong mayorya kay Cory Aquino. Ini sarong honor ini kang Bicol sa nagkasarano kita. Ako sa alas 9, 5% na sana kan militar. Ngunyan, 0 na natada. Sa mismo, huminali na. Yun na yan, lari.
Sir.
Maaraman kung hainan whereabouts kayo na eh.
Hindi nga niya siya niya?
At diba at kasabay naman sa helicopter na?
Pwede siguro. Tapos siyempre...
Sa iyang business naman. Ibanan man ni kasabay mambirmi ni Imelda. Tigsaro sindang helicopter. So mga mister yaon naman sa saro. So mga mister yaon naman sa sarong helicopter.
I see.
There is no replacement for that. Some of these records are the records of our national heroes like Rizal and the leaders of our fight for Filipino independence. Kaya po kung maaari lamang iwasan natin ang looting or robbery dyan sa area na yan. Ako ay nag-utos ng mga sundalo at mga pulis na nanggaling dito sa Camp Crame at saka sa Western Police District na tumulong na mag-maintain ng peace and order kung sakali